Hello, I'm Steve Berg, City Administrator for the City of Marshfield. I'm here today with Mayor Bob McManus doing our post-council meeting news conference, getting you caught up on what happened at the council meeting on Tuesday, January 26th. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Mike Warren of WDLB.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Not a whole lot to talk about on this one. Mayor, I'll start with you. I guess the big item, my big takeaway from the meeting was having to do with an agenda item. I'll just read it. Request to approve a resolution extending the emergency authorization provided by resolution until April 13th or such other date and time as the Common Council determines. Maybe just explain that. Go back, take us through the discussion. What does all that mean? And what is the latest on, when we hear those terms, emergency authorization, what does it mean at our level? And where are we at with that situation now moving forward after the Common Council meeting on Tuesday night?
So there's been two emergency orders that took in state of emergency, if you will. And what this does is it allows Steve a lot of flexibility in what can be done with city-owned buildings and whatnot. Primarily here at City Hall, it has generally been closed to the public. However, City Hall continues to function. And it was there for the safety of course, our employees and the safety of the public to limit access, social distancing. Everybody has to wear masks. Most of our city employees in their offices, if their doors are closed, they don't have to wear a mask, but as they go through the halls, they do. And also gave some of our city employees the ability to work remotely. And so I think it worked very well. We have been very fortunate so far that we've not really had much of a disruption in the form of city employees of COVID. And so we believe that has been very good. And a very big issue as well is there's been no interruption of services to our citizens. So they could still call during normal business hours. And if they are going to come into City Hall, if they do have an appointment, they are required to wear a mask and everybody stays socially distant. And we have our Zoom meetings. So the good thing is as you saw back in November and December, the COVID numbers were really spiking through the roof. They were really going harsh. And we're very fortunate in the fact that over the last several weeks, it seems like the amount of infections, certainly the percentage, is going down. And so that is very helpful, and we continue to see that. So what this order was extending this through, I believe, March 23rd.
Yeah.
And that will allow us to keep City Hall functioning the way it is, where it is still closed, in essence, to the public, but it will continue to work efficiently. Now, the biggest thing was we were closed during the time when people were coming in to make their tax payments and things like this. So we have people can do that online. There's a drop box out in front as well. And I'm not aware, there may be some, but I'm not aware of any real complaints that we had because of the way the closure has taken effect. So what the Common Council agreed to by a vote of 9-1 is continue this through March 23rd. And then we'll see where we're at that time. If the virus continues to take a downward toll, then I think in March 23rd, we'll be very optimistic about what would happen. But with the new strains that are coming out, I just think it would be premature to lift everything now, even though we've got this great glimmer of hope that the amount of infections is gone dramatically down. The amount of people in hospitals is dramatically lower. What you don't want to do is get too optimistic too quick. And that was the essence of it.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as the date change, you read earlier, Mike, that the date on the agenda said April 13th. The date on the resolution itself said March 23rd. That was my fault. I had initially given April 13th as the date to the city clerk's office, thinking that would be appropriate. And then I later on looked back and saw that the mandate from the governor's office ran through the latter part of March, and that would be a more appropriate date to hold the extension to. Normally when you see the phrase, extending emergency authorization to the city administrator, you're thinking, what's he want to do? What more things does he want to do? Does he want to restrict more buildings in more ways and cut access to facilities? It's exactly what Bob said very well. We see things in a good trend. We see the number of cases declining. We see the vaccine beginning to get out there to people. We're hopeful that as we get later into winter and spring, things will relax rather than tighten. But this does allow me to deal with the issues that come up between meetings. Sometimes we go 3 weeks between council meetings, mainly 2, but you don't want to have another council meeting that has to come up if it obviously becomes so bad in a pinch that it needs to be revised in some way. And that's kind of what we went through back in November. All of a sudden we began to see that not only were the cases spiking, as the mayor mentioned, but our staff was becoming depleted. We had so many people in some of our facilities, including City Hall itself, on quarantine that we really needed to act, and we needed to have the authority to continue to act as appropriate. So this really just continues where we've been the last couple months. But I share the mayor's optimism totally that as we get farther into 2021, that perhaps we'll start coming out of this.
Well, it was kind of exciting, too. On the heels of that, Mayor, we saw this past week the Fire and Rescue Department hosting a drive-through COVID vaccination clinic.
Yeah, that was very nice. And it was by appointment only. And that is, we're very excited about that. And of course, the vaccines are being given up at the clinic as well. So people now have a choice. And I understand there's going to be a new vaccine coming out that'll just be a one shot, and you don't have to go back for a second one. So the more we get a handle on this, the more people that choose to get vaccinated, and I think the better off we are. Even still, we like I said, we don't want to get overly optimistic too quick. Let's just beat this as best we can. Remain socially distant. Wear a mask. We don't know where the mask mandate is going to go when the governor comes out, but understand that for the mask mandate, regardless of what the folks in Madison do, our local issues would still be in place. And so inside city buildings and at city facilities, masks would still be expected. And of course, socially distancing. We're very, very fortunate that our first responders, our police and our firefighters and paramedics, they're out there every day with with folks and some have been on quarantine and whatnot, but primarily they've done a very, very good job of remaining healthy. Some still had to be off for quarantine. But by and large, I think the city all of our city employees and departments took this very seriously. And even though we did have to have people that were quarantined, for the most part, I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to the mayor and the council for the way they've taken COVID-19 steps throughout this process. You guys have been outstanding, and also to our frontline staff. They've had some difficult situations, especially earlier in COVID-19, but even now, people come in the lobby and they know that they can't go any farther, but they do call on the phone, and there's times we have come out briefly to help them because it's a person who just doesn't understand exactly what they need to do, or they have questions, but we try to hold those to a very brief minimum, because effectively we're not supposed to be having public contact at this point. And my final shout out goes to our citizens. I know that there's a lot of views on this. I think the mayor and I have talked about this before. There's people on all sides of the spectrum when you talk about the mask requirement, but our citizens have really done a good job of respecting it. We thought there might be more negativity surrounding the fact that we don't take property tax payments in person this year because of it. And, admittedly, I'm not on the front line. I'm not out there with the people who are in that immediate customer service area, but I'm not hearing that there have been an extensive number of people yelling at us or complaining. I think we've got a good citizenry here in Marshfield, and I think they've said, look, they're doing what they need to do to protect themselves and to protect us, and, we respect that. So I appreciate them as well.
And now, Mayor, you alluded to what's happening at the state level, with the Senate, at least as we're talking, repealing the mask mandate from the governor, the Assembly was preparing to do that too. That nullifies the statewide mask mandate. What it does not do, I think you kind of alluded to that, it does not undo anything that may be in place at local levels or what businesses may have in place for like their restaurants or what have you. So maybe just can you clarify again, when we hear that at the statewide level, you know, they've gotten rid of the governor's mask mandate, that does not mean that, you know, for instance, the city can still ask people to wear masks within city, you know, facilities and buildings, correct?
Within city buildings and our employees and whatnot, and we do that ultimately for their safety. Now, however, if in Madison, if they do vote on that today and they overturn the mask mandate, that would affect businesses, and they could either choose to keep wearing masks or choose things for their facilities or not. And they would make that choice. And I believe we've made the decision, and the council voted on this by 9-1, that we're just going to err on the side of being safe. And so we're still going to keep all of our emergency orders in place. And I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic that March 23rd, and maybe sooner, if we see that things are going on, March 23rd would be the end of it. But we can always end it sooner if we continue to see the very optimistic numbers that are coming out. Then, you know, then it may change things. But if you just go back to November, you know, when the amount of people in the hospital was up to 2,500 to 2,800 people throughout the state, and our own, we have a world-class health facility right here, and they were busting at the seams. And, you know, we rely on that information, so we don't want to go back to that point. If you look at, I believe this morning when I checked, there was a total of, I think, 850 or so people. And that's throughout the state that are in the hospital. And in our local area, it was in the 80s, I think 82 or 83. But last week, it was down to about 63 or 64 in the local north central, the 12 counties that are in the north central region. So it went from 64 to 65 up into the 80s. And so you keep an eye on that. That is technically an upward trend. But the numbers overall are very, very optimistic. And so we're just going to err on the safety of our employees and our citizens.
Yep, agree. All right. Anything else on that one?
I would like to mention this one thing too as well. We do understand, and Steve brought this up, that some people have, there are people out there that are just completely against masks. And I do appreciate their opinion. They feel as though their rights are being violated, and they are completely against them, don't want to use them. You have another group that, you know, they want them all the time. We're even hearing now that some folks are saying wear 2 masks, 1 isn't enough. And so what's important to understand is being the country that we are, everybody is entitled to their opinion. Everybody is entitled to their viewpoint, and which I think is a great thing. But when it gets down to the decisions that are made here, we are just deciding that within the buildings that we have and in the areas that we have employees, that we're going to continue to wear masks, continue to socially distant, and be careful through March 23rd. However, that's just in our city buildings and city facilities. What people choose to do when they go to a restaurant or a supermarket or a local business, that's going to be completely up to them based on whether the mandate gets, overturned or not.
All right. Also, and there really there weren't a lot of highlights on the regular agenda beyond that. Was there anything else that either of you wanted to highlight?
I'll just say real briefly that we had a visit from Sean Wall. He's our new representative from MEUW. They do our safety program. He's taken over for Steve Isaacson, who used to be that person. Jen Rakey, our human resources director, introduced him, and he just, kind of gave a brief introduction about himself and what he does. I just want the public to know that, again, that we're trying to do our best for workplace safety, to keep our employees protected, but also to try and keep costs down. You look at the mayor and the council during the budget season, and we're just scraping to find dollars to trim to try and make things work for the taxpayers and for that year's budget. Well, one of the big things we face, are things like increasing insurance costs, workers' comp, you name it. And, so safety is a two-pronged thing. It's good for our employees. We don't want to have an accident that could have been prevented and have one of our staff, being treated at the emergency room. But along with that, we don't want to have the types of claims that come from injuries and that oftentimes drive up our premiums. So he just gave a brief report. I just want the public to know that we're very serious about that. We took a much more serious stance a few years ago, and we're following through on a workplace safety program that is pretty substantive.
There were a couple of closed session items. One says review amendment to offer to purchase for land located in tax increment financing district number 7. What's the update?
I'll start, Bob, and then if you want to chime in. Oftentimes we come out of these closed sessions and there's no action, and you see on the agenda possible project in TID 5 or possible project in TID 7. Well, it's good to be able to report something today. It's really a continuation of something that came out a couple months ago. But there's a company called Raleigh Winter and Associates. They've been interested in purchasing roughly 8 to 10 acres of land in the city's industrial park, Yellowstone Industrial Park. Interestingly enough, normally when we sell industrial or business park land, it's to someone who themselves is going to be doing a project. You sell it to a company who's going to build a facility and use it. I mean, it's going to be their home. In this case, these folks build for others. So they are working on the other side, apart from us, to nail down someone to be occupying the building that they're looking at constructing here in Marshfield. And so as a result, it's a slightly different kind of process. But they had, we had an agreement with them in a purchase offer, giving them till January 15th of this year to take care of some contingencies, to bring it all together so we could feel comfortable moving forward with the sale. Those didn't all happen, and some of them are outside of the control of the purchaser. And so they asked for additional time until February 28th to work things out on the other end as they try hopefully to nail down the party that would actually be the business going into that building. So the council and the mayor felt comfortable with that. It's another 45 days. We'd like to see the project come together, but we also want to make sure that we give every chance for that to happen here and be as open and as cooperative as we can be with this potential firm.
Okay, and Mayor, sounds exciting, right? Development in the city, which is something that is constantly sort of being, I know we're always chasing development, right? I mean, it seems like that is a never ending, that's kind of one of the main things the city does.
Well, it is. And this one, we're very optimistic because when you have development, then you have more jobs for citizens, local jobs, good paying jobs. And also the folks that do have that employment then go out to the local businesses. So it's a real snowball, and it's very optimistic. But I will say this, because Steve alluded to it, we're very, very happy with we're always watching our expenses and everything. And I would just like to commend you at WDLB for the weather reports that you guys have been doing, keeping the snow away and keeping it all around us, because that benefits everybody in the fact that we don't have to have our snow removal out there. That saves money. So great job, and I hope you keep that up.
I echo that.
It's amazing what free cheese will do. So do we have any idea what, you're looking at Raleigh Winter and Associates. Do we have any idea who they are building for and what they are building?
No, we're kind of kept at bay on that to some degree. And we do know that it's an industrial project. It sounds like it's probably going to be warehousing. But it does sound like it's going to be a building potentially of some pretty good size, which means in addition to what the mayor is talking about with jobs, it also means tax base. And, you know, the reason we have an industrial park and a business park, and the reason we put sewer and water and street in out there is to attract and expand businesses. So that's the kind of thing we like to see. We talk about the budget on one end, and it's important to be cutting expenses and trimming. We looked at everything this year from travel and training to any number of things. The flip side of that is the revenue side. We've got a business and industrial park that are not full yet. You know, you're part of this as the representative to the Joint Review Board. We're looking to do some expansion and get some more growth there by creating TIF District 12 as an extension to Yellowstone Industrial Park. You want to grow your tax base. That's the important revenue side of the equation.
Also, there was another closed session item, update on employment law matters involving police department. Any update on that one?
I can start again, and if the mayor wishes to add, I mean, all I really did with this, and it was at the request of one of our council members, Mike, was kind of update the council on where those proceedings are. You know, sometimes you wonder if you're keeping track of the dates and all these kind of things. And, you know, the main thing is we had the arbitration hearing for the officer who was dismissed. That was back in the middle of December. I let the council know that now there's some follow-up work, attorneys submitting, you know, briefs, if you will, following up on some of the testimony that was heard. But it's going to be several months before we get a ruling from the arbitrator on that case. So I just kind of gave that report, answered, you know, any questions they had, and that was about it. With respect to the other one, the status of Chief Gramza, I just kind of touched briefly on the criminal side, which I think you know you're following, I assume, in terms of the court dates. It sounds like there's an oral ruling expected by the judge in February regarding some things. And then touched on the status of the employment law side of it, which is when, if you recall back on December 29th, the council did vote to authorize me to send to the Fire and Police Commission a charging document that actually ends in a request to terminate Chief Gramza. And so I kind of updated him a little bit on that, where that stands, and the city attorney did too, in terms of what happens next. You know, when is the hearing likely to be held? How does that come together? We don't have a date yet specifically for the hearing, but I think you'll be hearing that sometime soon, that one hopefully will be announced. And, you know, on behalf of the mayor and the council, I mean, everybody wants to see this expedited to the greatest degree possible. It's obviously been a long time since August when, you know, this first broke, if you will. And, you know, we want to see a timely resolution. I think the council and mayor have been consistent about that. But again, there's legalities. There's a lot of work that has to be done on these types of cases. So, but hopefully in the next month or two, you'll be seeing some progress there in terms of a hearing and a resolution, at least getting to that point.
Anything on that? Okay.
Nope, Steve hit everything.
All right. And then coming out of closed session too, there was right at the very end of the meeting, there was suggested items for future agendas. I found it interesting. The Common Council President Alderman Witzel asked for a couple of agenda items. One, he said something about him being made aware of a formal written complaint involving the mayor. He didn't really say much else, and that he wants that as a future agenda item. Any idea what is he referencing there?
Well, as many people know, there was an investigation done. I talked about this on your station a long time ago. That there was a complaint made back, I believe, on August 6th. And that did go to the Portage County Sheriff for a review, and they did their investigation. They closed their investigation. They forwarded that information to the Wood County District Attorney, who reviewed the information. And I believe they closed the investigation back on right around December 8th. And they closed the investigation. There was no charges or anything like this. But there was somebody that had a copy of, which certainly is open to them, that had a copy of the report, and they submitted that as a complaint to Tom Witzel, I believe, on Tuesday afternoon, late in the afternoon. He appropriately let the council know, and then it'll be up for discussion on he asked for a special closed meeting to be done on Tuesday after finance, budget, and personnel. And so it is going to be in review of that complaint. And there will also be another item that is being discussed to be on that agenda. And that will probably be, so when the agenda comes out, there will be more than just that one discussion of that complaint.
And just to add to the thing, it's this is really, I mean, what the council president did by suggesting this be held is give the council a chance to discuss it. A citizen has come forward with a complaint, and a copy of the report from Portage County has been seen now. And like the mayor said, there was no criminal pursuit in that matter at all by the DA. He declined to go that direction at all. But the council is going to take a look at this complaint and see if they feel there's any concerns that rise to a level that they should be addressing. So that's what will be happening.
Can you shed any light on what the complaint is? What is this citizen complaining about? I guess is, for lack of a better term, I don't know how else to say it. There's a complaint. What is the complaint about?
Well, I think, I'd really rather not comment on it right now. I will tell you that the document from the Portage County Sheriff's Office is in fact a public document that was secured. So it's a document that, anybody in the media or anybody listening to us right now could secure. And, that was used in part, obviously in what the complaint referenced, what the complaint was about. But I prefer at this point, since it's going to be a closed discussion of the council, not to really talk about the specific issue right now, issues.
All right. Was there anything else from the meeting? Again, I kind of prefaced this by saying it was kind of a light agenda, and that pretty much, I think, what sums up the meeting. Were there any other highlights from Tuesday?
I don't think so. You mentioned the other item that was brought up by Councilmember Witzel, and that is a request for a presentation with respect to stray and feral cats. And apparently he's gotten some information, and it sounds like maybe he's discussed it a little bit already with our ordinance officers, that problem may be rising. There's an ebb and flow, I think, in some of these kind of things with stray animals. And but it sounds like there's at least a thought right now that maybe we are seeing greater activity, and what can we do about it? What are we doing about it? So that probably will not be on the next council agenda, but I would think sometime in the next month or two, looking at having somebody who's kind of an expert in that field address the council. That's really all I would know.
All right, Mayor, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. And this concludes our review of the council meeting from January 26th and the post council meeting news conference. Thanks for watching.